Once, not too long ago, I met an ordinary man. I met an ordinary man who had an ordinary life, who lived in an ordinary house, who had an ordinary job, who wanted nothing except that which made him ordinary. No, I can assure you there was nothing extraordinary about this man at all. His ordinariness neither thrilled nor bored me. In fact, he found it to be quite inconsequential, quite ordinary, he thought. Lacking any spectacular gifts, talents, ideas, passions, even friends, he could have been considered quite forgettable, but he's the only one that I remember clearly. Could it have been his ordinariness that struck me? No, everything in his life was so unremarkable that it was almost remarkable how unremarkable he was. Almost. I don't remember this man for who he was before me. Rather, I remember him for who he became, who we both became after we met. One day, this man's ordinary life with his ordinary job and extraordinary acquaintances was interrupted by a single spectacular thought, a desire that did not diminish despite the dour demeanour of the dull man. Began as all desires do. A flicker, a flame, then a fire burning so bright that it destroyed every other thought in this man's musty mind. Now, although desire itself is quite an ordinary experience, it does feel rather extraordinary. And this desire disturbed the man because it disrupted his uneventful life. He was unhappy with this ordinary yet inescapable feeling and how it hindered the ordinariness of his equal inescapable life. But desires do not bend to dismay and passions do not pale in the face of routine, so the desire continued burning bright, blinding the man to any ordinary thought. And this caused the man to complete his average job to a below average level, and soon others began to notice. This frustrated the man, and the frustration was in turn frustrating, as the man ordinarily kept his emotions to an ordinary level, finding excessive feeling flashy, especially for its fickle nature. It was well known that the man loathed anything less than ordinary in himself, and he simply refused to accept this unordinary feeling. It wasn't long before others noticed. The first to notice at the man's ordinary job one day asked if the man was all right, as they had noticed him where they had not noticed him before. The man said he felt abnormal and cursed himself for offering an abnormally honest answer. The second noticer asked why, and the man was unordinarily candid in his response. He cursed his unusual behaviour once more, knowing this to be a memorable and not at all ordinary interaction. Because it wasn't. Because that was when the first noticer suggested to the man that he come to visit me. And who am I? Well, I'm so glad you asked. I'm no ordinary solution, yet I nonetheless offer solutions. I am the answer to all desires, though I leave very few satisfied, for what you want is not always what you need, and everything must come at a price. I've been granted many names across many years and many cultures. Some choose to call me a genie, others a nymph, a fairy, and some a god. Regardless of what you know me as, my purpose remains the same. Those who seek me out do so to get what they want. But ease is expensive, and often the reality of their fantasy is worse than they imagined. Life does not often match the expectations of imagination. When the man arrived to me, I was unhappy to meet him. Here was a man who dealt in manners and monotony, boring things that drained me. It took everything for me to even look at him. But look at him I did, intently, for I feared I'd forget him if I looked away. I asked him why he'd come, why my own worst nightmare had graced me with his presence, and he told me his acquaintance had sent him. I do not believe in acquaintances, I told him. Only friends and foes, the forgotten and strangers exist. I refuse to be a mere acquaintance to you, as I do not deal in such insignificant terms. I am to be your first and only friend, lest you make me your foe. I could see that this hurt him. I could see that he lived in the lukewarm, flinching from the fire and cringing from the cold. But I could see that desire overwhelmed him too. And for him to be at all satisfied, he would have to cooperate, leaving his haven of equilibrium behind. I invited him to step into my chaos only while we spoke, for I'm not unreasonable, and let him squirm in its beautiful strangeness. Only then could I consider his desires. I longed to know what the man wanted, for no desire can ever be quite so ordinary. I wondered even if my powers would satisfy him, for when you have everything you ever wanted, you may find that no amount of wish fulfillment can grant what you're missing. And humans survive on wanting more. It's what keeps me in business. Yet I had never met someone so intent on non-event that I thought perhaps I could pacify this ordinary nightmare that had landed at my feet. When I demanded he divulge his desires, the ordinary man stuttered and stammered and told me what he wanted. He called it something ordinary. He wished for an ability that would compound his ordinariness, that would cause people to marvel at his ordinariness, by which he meant their eyes would pass right through him. He wanted to make him so ordinary that he was almost invisible. Almost. I asked him if he wanted invisibility instead, for I worried that something so bland would drain me of my power, that a wish granted offering no joy or pain would mean I had no chaos to keep me going, that I might grow weak. And I survive on chaos after all. He said invisibility would make him extraordinary, that was not what he wanted. I begged him to reconsider. I didn't know what would become of me if I granted this request, and he told me that since he had stepped into my chaos, it was my turn to step into his order. What neither of us realized was that what he asked of me was actually utterly extraordinary. The man left, returning to his inconsequential life, leaving me in despair. He returned to his ordinary home, where he sat down and read for the first time. Much to his surprise, as well as mine, he discovered that this was no ordinary gift. For, like desire, books can seem ordinary and feel anything but. He discovered that books are filled with joy and sorrow, and these feelings can overwhelm you. He found that they were filled with people, not real, but all too real for him. They contain images without pictures, songs without music. They provide solace, they provide escape. They can fill your life with each turn of the page. They can steal loneliness and remind you of people long since forgotten. The man and I had both considered something as regular as reading to be an ordinary activity, but we soon learned that what makes us common doesn't always make us ordinary. And so, once the ordinary man started reading, he found that he could not stop. He read until his eyes itched and the cold crept in and the light faded. He read until sleep overcame him, never surrendering sooner than he had to. He pored over every word and was always hungry for more. Within the pauses of his ordinary life, he immersed himself, lost in the extraordinary words and the extraordinary worlds presented between two covers. By inhabiting different lives, he realized that he was capable of all feeling and passion he read about, and soon he began to care for others around him as well. He no longer had acquaintances, he had friends. I wonder if that had been his goal all this time. Well, as for me, my worries were unfounded, because through the life The man gained, I am now more powerful than ever. The man could be found, ordinary no more, reading every day from the day we met until the day he died a truly ordinary death. But, as I said, everything comes at a price. I took the man's ultimate comfort, his ordinariness. For life was never quite so ordinary again. He opened up worlds within himself, and through this gift finally saw the extraordinary beauty in the chaos of common life. Once, not so long ago, I met an ordinary man. The last ordinary man. I took his ordinariness and gave him something spectacular. And there has never been a truly ordinary person since.